The notification pings on my phone at exactly 6:47 p.m. on a Friday evening that should have changed everything. The email from Blackstone and Associates Financial Department confirming what I've been working toward for 3 years. My year-end bonus of $150,000 for successfully closing the Meridian Industries acquisition, the deal that everyone said was impossible, but that I pulled together through 18-hour days and countless weekends sacrificed to corporate ambition. I'm standing in my corner office on the 32nd floor, looking out at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the December darkness. And for the first time in months, I feel something that might be happiness, something that might be hope for the future I've been planning, where I take this money and finally start my own law firm, finally escape from under the shadow of partners who take credit for my work and clients who see me as just another associate in an expensive suit. My wife, Elena Chen, should be the first person I call with this news, the woman who has supported me through law school and the grinding years of building my career, the sophisticated artist from the prestigious Whitmore family who chose to marry a workaholic corporate lawyer instead of the trust fund princes her parents probably expected. And so I dial her number with my thumb already composing the celebration dinner we'll have at that French restaurant she loves, the weekend getaway we can finally afford without checking our credit card balances first, the future that suddenly feels possible instead of perpetually delayed. Marcus? Her voice sounds distant when she answers, distracted in a way that immediately puts me on edge because I know Elena's moods better than I know the tax code, and this particular tone means she's about to tell me something I don't want to hear. That's nice, honey, but I need to tell you something and I hope you'll understand because this is really important. The happiness that was building in my chest deflates like a punctured tire as I ask what's wrong, what's happened, what crisis has emerged to overshadow the first genuinely good news I've had in months. And Elena takes that particular breath she always takes before delivering news that will cost me money, time, or peace of mind. I've already transferred the money to help someone who really needs it right now, she says. And I feel the words hit me like a physical blow, because there's no way she could know about the bonus, no way she could have accessed the account. No way this conversation is happening the way it's happening. Derek is finally ready to get serious about his recovery, and his family has completely cut him off financially, and this private rehabilitation program is his last chance to get clean and start over. And I couldn't just stand by and watch him destroy himself when we have the resources to help. Derek Sullivan, the wounded veteran from her yoga class who appeared in our lives 6 months ago with his carefully cultivated story of service-related trauma and addiction struggles, the man who somehow always needs exactly the amount of money we happen to have available, who has been staying in our guest room more often than not because his housing situation is always temporary, always complicated, always requiring our intervention and support. Derek Sullivan, who Elena insists is just a friend who needs compassion and understanding, who calls her at all hours for emotional support, who has somehow become the third person in our marriage without my ever agreeing to let him in. Elena, that money wasn't even in our joint account yet, I say, my voice coming out strangled because I'm trying to process how she could have known about the bonus before I told her, how she could have accessed funds that shouldn't be accessible, how my wife has managed to steal my future before I even knew I had one. How did you even know about it? And how did you transfer money that wasn't available to transfer? There's a pause that lasts too long, a silence that tells me everything I need to know about how much Elena has been hiding from me. And when she speaks again, her voice has that defensive edge that means she's been caught in something she hoped I wouldn't discover. I may have used the emergency credit line we set up last year, but Marcus, this is an emergency. This is someone's life we're talking about. And I knew you'd want to help if you understood how desperate Derek's situation really is. The emergency credit line that was supposed to be for actual emergencies, for medical bills or job loss or natural disasters, the $50,000 safety net that I agreed to because Elena convinced me that responsible couples plan for the unexpected. And now I'm discovering that my wife has not only used that safety net to fund another man's rehabilitation, but has somehow accessed even more money than that credit line should have allowed. Which means there are financial arrangements in our marriage that I don't know about, decisions being made with my money and my credit that I haven't authorized. Elena, that's a $50,000 credit line, but you said Derek's program costs $150,000. So where did the rest of the money come from? I ask. And even as I'm asking the question, I'm pulling up our bank accounts on my computer, watching the balances load with the kind of sick anticipation you feel when you're about to confirm your worst fears. What exactly have you done with our finances? The numbers that appear on my screen tell a story I don't want to believe. Our savings account, which should have $40,000 from my previous bonuses and careful budgeting, now shows a balance of negative $8,000, and there are transfers I don't recognize, payments to accounts I've never heard of, a pattern of financial activity that has been happening behind my back for months. Our credit cards, which I thought were under control, show balances that make my stomach turn, and when I click through to see the detailed statements, I find charges for luxury hotels, expensive restaurants, clothing stores that I know Elena hasn't shopped at because she would have shown me what she bought, would have modeled the outfits, would have included me in the shopping experience the way she always has. Derek has been helping me with some investment opportunities that could really pay off for us in the long run, Elena says, and her voice has shifted into the tone she uses when she's trying to convince me that her impulsive decisions are actually sophisticated business strategies, the same tone she used when she spent $80,000 on the art gallery that failed within 6 months, when she convinced me that her spiritual retreat in Costa Rica was a necessary investment in our relationship, when she explained why her friend Miranda needed a loan to start her jewelry business that never materialized. He has connections in the art world that could help me finally get my career off the ground. And sometimes you have to spend money to make money, Marcus. The art career that has been perpetually on the verge of taking off for the entire 5 years of our marriage, the gallery shows that never quite happen, the collectors who are always interested but never quite ready to buy, the grants and residencies that she's always applying for but never receiving. And now Derek Sullivan has somehow become the key to unlocking Elena's artistic potential through investment opportunities that require my money but promise our future success. I'm scrolling through months of financial statements while she talks, seeing a pattern of deception that makes me feel like I don't know the woman I married, like I've been living with a stranger who has been systematically draining our resources while I worked 18-hour days to provide the lifestyle she expected. Elena, I need you to explain to me exactly what Derek's involvement is in our finances, because what I'm seeing here suggests that this isn't just about a rehabilitation program, I say. And my voice is getting that cold, controlled tone that I use in court when I'm about to destroy an opposing counsel's argument, when I've found the weakness in their case that will unravel everything they've built. I'm looking at charges for hotels in the Hamptons, restaurants in Manhattan, shopping sprees at Bergdorf Goodman, and none of these are places you've mentioned going. None of these are expenses we've discussed. Another pause, longer this time. And I can hear Elena moving around in the background, can hear her heels clicking on our hardwood floors the way they do when she's pacing, because she's trying to figure out how to manage a situation that's spinning out of her control. Derek and I have been working on a business plan that requires some upfront investment in networking and relationship building. And yes, that means attending certain social events and maintaining appearances in the art world. But Marcus, this is how business works in creative industries. This is how you build the connections that lead to real opportunities. The words hit me like a physical blow, because suddenly I understand that Derek Sullivan isn't just Elena's friend who needs help, isn't just a wounded veteran seeking support and rehabilitation, but is actually my wife's business partner in some venture that she's been funding with my money while lying to me about the nature of their relationship, And the rehabilitation program is either a cover story or a side project to the main business of spending my income on a lifestyle that they're sharing, while I work myself to exhaustion in a corporate law office. I hang up the phone without saying goodbye because I can't trust myself to speak without saying something that will make this conversation into a fight, that will wake up our neighbors and end with Elena crying and me apologizing for being unreasonable about money. The pattern we've fallen into every time I've tried to question her spending or her decision-making, and instead, I sit in my office chair staring at our financial records while the city lights blur into a kaleidoscope of betrayal and disbelief. The story of how Elena and I met seems like a fairy tale from someone else's life now. A romantic comedy where the driven corporate lawyer falls for the free-spirited artist at a charity gala for underprivileged youth, where she was volunteering her time to help kids discover their creative potential, while I was writing checks to ease the guilt of spending my life making rich people richer. She was beautiful in that effortless way that only comes from being born into the kind of family where beauty and sophistication are inherited, along with trust funds and social connections, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly student loan payment, but carrying herself like someone who cared more about helping others than displaying her wealth. We talked for 3 hours that night about art and justice and the responsibility that comes with privilege. And when she gave me her number, I felt like I had won some kind of cosmic lottery, like this woman who could have chosen anyone had somehow seen something in me worth pursuing. The Whitmore family welcomed me with the kind of warm acceptance that I mistook for genuine affection. Dinner parties where Elena's mother would ask about my career prospects, and her father would discuss investment strategies, family gatherings where I was included in conversations about summer houses and European vacations that made me feel like I was finally part of the world I had been working toward my entire life. Elena positioned herself as the perfect complement to my corporate ambition, the artistic soul who would keep me grounded and connected to beauty and meaning while I climbed the ladder of professional success. And I was so grateful for her influence that I never questioned why all of her creative projects required my financial support, why her artistic vision always seemed to align with expensive opportunities that promised exposure and recognition, but delivered only bills and disappointment. The gallery that was going to revolutionize the local art scene but closed after 6 months when the promised investors disappeared. The sculpture studio that was going to be her breakthrough creative space but turned into an expensive storage unit for works that never found buyers. The spiritual retreat that was going to help her connect with her authentic artistic voice but resulted in nothing but Instagram photos and credit card debt. Every failed venture was explained as a learning experience, a necessary step in the journey toward artistic fulfillment. And Elena always had the next opportunity ready, the next investment that would finally pay off and vindicate all the previous expenditures. Derek Sullivan appeared 6 months ago as the latest in a series of people who were going to help Elena achieve her potential. The wounded veteran who understood struggle and creativity in ways that my privileged background couldn't appreciate, who had connections in the art world through his own traumatic but inspiring journey toward recovery and self-expression. I accepted Derek's presence in our life the way I had accepted all of Elena's enthusiasms and projects, as the price of being married to someone whose spirit couldn't be contained by conventional expectations, whose artistic temperament required understanding and support from someone who loved her enough to enable her dreams. When Derek started staying in our guest room because his housing situation was complicated, when Elena started spending her days helping him navigate the bureaucracy of veteran services and addiction recovery programs, when their friendship became the central focus of her emotional energy, I told myself that this was Elena's compassionate nature expressing itself, that supporting Derek was another way she was making our marriage more meaningful than just 2 people pursuing professional success and material comfort. But now, Staring at financial records that reveal months of deception and manipulation, I realize that Derek Sullivan has been Elena's project in the same way that the gallery and the studio and the retreat were her projects. Except this time, the investment isn't just money, but the complete restructuring of our marriage around his needs and their partnership. And I have been funding my own replacement without even realizing what was happening. The confrontation happens on a Tuesday evening when I come home early from work with printouts of our financial statements and a list of questions that Elena can't answer with her usual combination of artistic temperament and emotional manipulation. Derek is in our kitchen making dinner, wearing one of my shirts and using our good olive oil to prepare some elaborate dish that requires ingredients I know we can't afford. And when I ask him about the rehabilitation program that Elena funded with my bonus money, he gets that deer-in-headlights expression that confirms everything I've suspected about the authenticity of his story. The program is very exclusive and doesn't really advertise its methods publicly, Derek says, not meeting my eyes while he continues stirring whatever expensive sauce he's preparing. And his voice has the practiced casualness of someone who has told this lie many times before. It's more of a holistic approach that combines traditional therapy with creative expression and spiritual healing. And the results speak for themselves, even though the process isn't something you can easily explain to someone who hasn't experienced addiction firsthand. Elena appears in the kitchen doorway wearing a silk dress that I don't recognize, her hair styled in a way that suggests she's been somewhere important today, somewhere that required looking more sophisticated than usual. And when she sees me holding the financial statements, her expression shifts into the defensive posture that means she's already prepared arguments for why everything I'm about to say is unfair and unreasonable. Marcus, I hope you're not planning to interrogate Derek about his recovery process because that's incredibly insensitive and invasive, she says, moving to stand beside Derek in a way that makes their alliance clear, their united front against my questions and concerns. Some things are private, and some things require trust, and if you can't support the people I care about, then maybe you need to examine why you're so threatened by my friendships. The financial statements in my hand tell a different story than the one Elena is trying to sell. Bank records that show payments to luxury hotels and high-end restaurants during the same weeks that Derek was supposedly in intensive rehabilitation. Credit card charges for shopping sprees and entertainment expenses that suggest a lifestyle completely incompatible with addiction recovery. And when I point out these discrepancies, Derek suddenly develops an urgent need to take a phone call outside while Elena's defensive posture shifts into full attack mode. You're checking up on us like we're criminals, like Derek and I are conspiring against you instead of trying to build something meaningful with our lives, she says, and her voice has that rising edge that means she's about to make this conversation into a referendum on my character rather than an examination of her behavior. You spend all your time at that law firm making money for people who already have too much money. And when I try to use some of that money to help someone who actually needs it, to invest in relationships and opportunities that could benefit all of us, you act like I'm stealing from you. The word stealing hangs in the air between us like an admission of guilt, and I realize that Elena knows exactly what she's done, but has convinced herself that it's justified, that my money is really our money, and our money should be available for whatever purposes she deems worthy, regardless of whether I agree with those purposes or even know about them. The rehabilitation program was never the real issue. It was just the cover story for a financial arrangement that has been redistributing my income to fund Elena and Derek's partnership without my knowledge or consent. Elena, I hired a private investigator, I say, and the words come out calmer than I feel because I've moved past anger into the cold calculation that happens when I realize I'm dealing with people who have been lying to me systematically and strategically. Derek Sullivan isn't a veteran. He never served in any branch of the military. He's a trust fund kid from Connecticut, whose family cut him off because of his drug and gambling problems, and the rehabilitation program doesn't exist. The address you gave me is a luxury apartment complex where Derek has been living under a lease that's paid for with our credit cards. Elena's face goes through a series of expressions that would be fascinating to watch if they weren't revealing the complete collapse of everything I thought I knew about my marriage. Surprise that I investigated. Anger that I discovered the truth. Calculation as she tries to figure out how to manage this new information. And finally, a kind of resigned defiance that tells me she's about to stop pretending that any of this was about helping Derek with his recovery. "So what if Derek isn't exactly what he told you he was?" she says. And her voice has shifted into the tone she uses when she's about to justify something that she knows is wrong, but has decided to defend anyway. "So, what if the rehabilitation program is more of a personal growth opportunity than a traditional treatment facility?" The important thing is that Derek and I are building something together that could actually change our lives instead of just maintaining the same boring routine of work and bills and suburban respectability. The something that Elena and Derek are building turns out to be an art investment business that uses my money to purchase works from struggling artists who then sell those works back to collectors in Derek's network for substantial profits, except that the struggling artists are mostly Derek's friends who create pieces specifically for this arrangement, and the collectors are mostly Derek's family connections who are willing to participate in what amounts to an elaborate money laundering scheme that takes my legitimate income and converts it into untraceable assets that Elena and Derek can use to fund their lifestyle without my oversight or control. The business model is actually quite sophisticated, involving shell companies and international transfers and art market dynamics that I would admire for their complexity if they weren't being used to steal my life savings and destroy my financial future. Elena explains all of this with the enthusiasm she usually reserves for describing her artistic projects, as if the elaborate deception is itself a kind of creative achievement that deserves recognition and praise rather than outrage and prosecution. "We've been planning this for over a year, Marcus, and it's finally starting to pay off in ways that could make all of us wealthy beyond anything your corporate salary could ever provide," she says. And I realize that the woman I married has been living a completely different life than the one I thought we were sharing, pursuing goals and relationships that exclude me except as a source of funding for schemes I'm not sophisticated enough to understand or appreciate. Derek has connections in the international art market that could help us build a portfolio worth millions, but it requires initial investment and trust and patience. And if you can't see the potential, then maybe you're not the right partner for this kind of opportunity. The word partner cuts through me like a blade, because suddenly I understand that Elena isn't just talking about a business partnership with Derek, but about a life partnership that makes me redundant, except as a source of income for their shared future. The rehabilitation program was never about helping Derek get clean. It was about establishing a financial pipeline that would allow Elena and Derek to build their relationship while using my money to fund their dreams of artistic and financial success. 2 years later, I'm driving home from another failed relationship. Another woman who seemed interested in building a life together until she realized that my divorce had left me with half my assets and a career that never recovered from the scandal of Elena's very public accusations of financial and emotional abuse. The Whitmore family's testimony in our divorce proceedings painted me as a controlling husband who used money to manipulate Elena's artistic development, and Elena's lawyer presented our financial records in a way that made my legitimate concerns about spending look like psychological abuse designed to crush her creative spirit. My law firm, concerned about the negative publicity and the impact on their corporate image, passed me over for the partnership track that had been my goal for 8 years, and the clients who had trusted me with their business started asking for different representation when Elena's accusations became public through her family's social media campaign. The bonus that was supposed to fund my own law firm instead went to lawyers and private investigators, and the forensic accountants needed to prove that Elena's art investment business was actually a sophisticated fraud scheme. But by the time we had documented everything, most of the money had been moved offshore or converted into artworks that were stored in locations I couldn't identify or access. Derek disappeared somewhere in Europe with what remained of our assets, and Elena moved back in with her parents while continuing to maintain that I had destroyed our marriage through my inability to appreciate her artistic vision and support her personal growth. The Whitmore family's version of events became the accepted narrative in our social circle, and I found myself isolated from friends who had been convinced that Elena was the victim of my corporate greed and emotional unavailability. The car accident happens on a rainy Thursday evening when I'm driving home from a dinner with a woman who seemed perfect on paper, but who spent the entire evening asking subtle questions about my financial situation and my plans for the future, and I realize that I'm going to spend the rest of my life explaining Elena's betrayal to people who will always wonder whether there was some truth to her accusations, whether I really was the kind of man who would use money to control and manipulate the woman he claimed to love. My last thought, as my car hydroplanes on the wet highway and crashes into the median barrier, is that I gave 15 years of my life to people who never deserved my trust, who used my love and loyalty as weapons against me, and that I'm dying with nothing to show for all the sacrifices I made, except the knowledge that I was too naive to see the truth, until it was too late to protect myself from the consequences of my own generosity. Then I opened my eyes and realized I had been reborn. The notification ping on my phone sounds exactly the same as it did the first time. That cheerful electronic chirp that announces the arrival of the email from Blackstone and Associates Financial Department confirming my year-end bonus of $150,000. But this time I know exactly what that sound means, and what will happen next if I let events proceed according to the script that Elena has already written for our future. I'm standing in the same corner office on the 32nd floor, looking out at the same city lights beginning to twinkle in the December darkness. But now I'm seeing everything with the clarity that comes from having lived through the consequences of my own naivety and Elena's carefully orchestrated betrayal. My phone starts ringing with Elena's contact photo filling the screen. The picture I took of her at last year's charity gala, where she's laughing and beautiful and everything appears perfect. But now I know that even then she was already planning the financial scheme that would destroy our marriage and steal my future, already building her relationship with Derek Sullivan while pretending to be the supportive wife who shared my dreams of building something meaningful together. The phone rings once, twice, 3 times while I stare at Elena's face and remember every lie she told me, every manipulation she used to access my money and my trust, every moment when I chose to believe her explanations instead of investigating the truth that was hiding behind her artistic temperament and emotional appeals. I don't answer the phone. Instead, I immediately log into my bank account and transfer the entire bonus amount to a separate account that Elena doesn't know about, the emergency fund I set up years ago but never had to use, because Elena always managed to find and drain any money I tried to save for our future. This time, she won't get the chance to steal what I've earned through months of 18-hour days and weekend work sessions, won't be able to fund Derek's lifestyle and their art investment scheme with money that was supposed to be the foundation for my own law firm and my escape from the corporate hamster wheel that has been consuming my life. The transfer completes in less than 30 seconds, and I feel something that might be relief or might be the beginning of a plan that will protect everything Elena tried to take from me, while ensuring that she faces the consequences of her choices in the most public and humiliating way possible. I know exactly how she'll try to manipulate me when I get home. exactly what emotional triggers she'll use to make me feel guilty for questioning her decisions, exactly how she'll present Derek's fictional rehabilitation needs as a test of my compassion and commitment to our marriage. This time I'm ready for all of it. Elena is waiting for me in our living room when I get home, wearing the silk dress that I now know cost $800 and was charged to our credit card during one of her shopping expeditions with Derek, and her expression has that carefully composed mixture of excitement and concern that means she's about to deliver news that will require my immediate financial support for someone else's crisis. She's practiced this performance for months, perfected the timing and the emotional notes that will make me feel like a terrible husband if I hesitate to provide whatever help she's about to request. Marcus, I'm so glad you're home because something wonderful has happened, but it's also complicated, and I really need your support right now, she says. And her voice has that breathless quality that she uses when she wants me to feel like we're partners in some exciting adventure, rather than me being the financial provider for her independent decision-making. Derek has finally found a rehabilitation program that could really change his life. But the timing is tricky, and it requires some immediate financial commitment. And I know this is a lot to ask, but I really believe this could be the breakthrough he's been working toward. I sit down across from her and study her face while she talks, watching for the micro-expressions that will tell me how much she already knows about my bonus and how much she's prepared to reveal about her relationship with Derek. And I realize that this conversation is actually a carefully scripted performance where Elena believes she knows all my lines and all my emotional responses, where she's confident that she can guide me toward the conclusion she wants without me ever realizing that I'm being manipulated. Tell me about this rehabilitation program, I say, and my voice comes out calmer and more interested than Elena is expecting, because she was prepared for resistance that she would have to overcome with emotional appeals and guilt tactics, not for genuine curiosity about the details of Derek's supposed treatment needs. Where is it located? And what kind of approach do they use? And how did Derek find out about it? Elena's momentary confusion tells me that she wasn't expecting questions that would require her to elaborate on the fictional rehabilitation program. And I watch her improvise details about holistic treatment methods and exclusive facilities while her eyes dart around the room in ways that indicate she's trying to remember which lies she's already told me about Derek's background and his recovery process. It's a very private facility that doesn't advertise publicly because their methods are so specialized, she says. And I recognize this as the same explanation Derek gave me in my previous life when I questioned the rehabilitation program's legitimacy. They combine traditional therapy with creative expression and spiritual healing, and the results are supposed to be incredible. But the program is quite expensive, and Derek's family has completely cut him off financially because they don't understand addiction or believe in his potential for recovery. The lies flow so smoothly that I almost admire Elena's ability to create a compelling narrative around Derek's supposed needs, except that I know exactly where this story leads and how much damage Elena is prepared to do to our marriage and my financial future in order to fund her partnership with Derek. This time, instead of getting angry or trying to argue with her explanations, I'm going to let Elena dig herself deeper into deception while I gather the evidence I need to expose everything she's been hiding from me. How much does this program cost? And what kind of timeline are we looking at for Derek's treatment? I ask. And Elena's relief at my apparent cooperation is visible as she launches into the financial details that she's obviously rehearsed, the $150,000 figure that exactly matches my bonus amount, the immediate payment requirement that would drain our savings and max out our credit lines, the urgency that makes it impossible for me to research the program or meet with Derek's supposed counselors before committing our money to his recovery. I know it's a lot of money, Marcus, but this is Derek's last chance to get his life together, and if we don't help him now, he could end up homeless or worse, Elena says, and her voice has shifted into the pleading tone that she knows I can't resist when she presents someone else's crisis as a test of my character and compassion. I've already told him that we want to help, and he's so grateful and hopeful, and I really think this could be the thing that saves his life. The manipulation is so familiar that I feel like I'm watching a play where I already know all the dialogue and all the plot twists, except this time I'm not going to deliver the lines that Elena expects, not going to fall into the emotional traps that she's set for me, not going to prioritize her approval over my own financial security and future happiness. Instead, I'm going to use Elena's confidence in her ability to manipulate me as the foundation for a plan that will expose her deception while protecting everyone she's tried to exploit. I want to meet Derek and hear about this program directly from him, I say, and Elena's momentary panic tells me that she wasn't prepared for this request, that the rehabilitation story was supposed to be accepted on faith rather than investigated through direct contact with the supposed beneficiary. If we're going to invest this much money in someone's recovery, I want to understand exactly what we're supporting and how we can be sure that Derek is committed to following through with the treatment. Elena recovers quickly, agreeing to arrange a meeting while I can see her mind working to figure out how to coach Derek through a conversation that will support their story without revealing the inconsistencies that I'm now prepared to identify and exploit. She doesn't know that I've already researched Derek's real background, already discovered that he's never been in the military and has no history of addiction treatment, already found the luxury apartment where he's been living with money that Elena has been transferring from our accounts. This time I'm going to let Elena and Derek perform their deception while I document everything they do and say, building the case that will destroy their partnership and ensure that they face the legal consequences of their fraud. But more importantly, I'm going to use this experience to rebuild the relationships that Elena systematically destroyed, reconnecting with the friends and family members who tried to warn me about her behavior, and especially with Rebecca Williams, the woman who has been waiting patiently for me to see clearly enough to recognize what real love and partnership actually look like. The game has started exactly the same way it did before, but this time I know how it ends, and I'm going to make sure that Elena and Derek's carefully planned deception becomes the foundation of their own destruction while I build the life and career that they tried to steal from me. Elena thinks she's playing chess with someone who doesn't understand the rules, but I've already seen the endgame, and this time I'm going to win. The private investigator I hire is a former FBI agent named Sarah Chen, who specializes in financial fraud and asset recovery. And when I show her the documentation I've compiled about Elena and Derek's art investment scheme, she studies the evidence with the kind of professional interest that tells me she's seen this type of sophisticated deception before and knows exactly how to expose it. Sarah's investigation reveals that Derek Sullivan is actually Derek Christopher Whitmore Sullivan, the black sheep of a Connecticut trust fund family who has been using various aliases and fabricated backstories to run long-term financial cons on successful professionals, and that Elena's involvement isn't just enabling Derek's schemes, but actively managing the business side of their fraud operation. "Your wife is the brains behind this operation," Sarah tells me during our third meeting, spreading photographs and financial records across the conference table in her office like evidence in a criminal trial, and I realize that Elena's artistic temperament and emotional manipulation tactics weren't just personality traits, but carefully developed tools for running confidence games that target men like me who mistake financial support for love and generosity for wisdom. Derek is the front man, the sympathetic character who generates emotional investment from the marks, but Elena is the one who researches targets, develops long-term strategies, and manages the financial infrastructure that makes these schemes profitable. The investigation reveals that Elena and Derek have been running variations of this con for at least 3 years, targeting successful men through carefully orchestrated meetings at charity events and social gatherings where Elena presents herself as the sophisticated woman who could bring meaning and culture to their achievement-focused lives. Derek's role is to appear later as the friend in need, the wounded veteran or struggling artist, or recovering addict who requires exactly the amount of financial support that the target can provide. And the rehabilitation program or business opportunity or creative project is always designed to drain the maximum amount of money before disappearing with assets that can't be easily traced or recovered. "They're not just stealing money," Sarah explains, showing me bank records that reveal transfers to offshore accounts and shell companies that Elena set up using her family's legal and financial connections. They're building a portfolio of art and real estate and cryptocurrency investments that will allow them to disappear completely once they've extracted everything they can from their current situation. And your marriage was always intended to be temporary, just long enough to establish the financial pipeline they needed to fund their next phase of operations. The evidence that Sarah provides is comprehensive enough to support criminal charges, but she recommends a different approach that will be more satisfying and more devastating to Elena and Derek's future prospects than a simple prosecution that might result in plea bargains and minimal jail time. Instead, she suggests that we document their fraud while allowing them to continue their deception until they commit their crimes in the most public setting possible, where their exposure will destroy not just their current scheme, but their ability to run similar cons in the future. "The annual Whitmore Foundation Charity Gala is next month," Sarah says, and I realize that she's suggesting we use Elena's family's most prestigious social event as the stage for revealing Elena and Derek's criminal partnership to everyone who could be their future targets or enablers. If we can get Derek to present his veteran story to an audience that includes real veterans and military families, and if we can arrange for the rehabilitation facility director to be present when Elena makes her donation announcement, then their fraud will be exposed in front of the people who matter most in their social and professional circles. The plan that emerges from our meetings is more sophisticated than simple revenge. It's a comprehensive strategy for protecting everyone Elena and Derek might target in the future, while ensuring that their current crimes are documented and prosecuted in ways that will result in maximum legal consequences. Sarah arranges for federal investigators to monitor their financial activities, for military fraud specialists to document Derek's false veteran claims, and for art market experts to analyze the legitimacy of their investment schemes. And by the time we're ready to spring our trap, Elena and Derek will be facing federal charges that carry serious prison sentences. Meanwhile, I begin the process of rebuilding the relationships that Elena systematically destroyed, starting with my sister Lisa, who tried to warn me about Elena's manipulation tactics from the beginning of our marriage, but who was gradually excluded from our social circle through Elena's careful management of family gatherings and holiday celebrations. Lisa's relief when I call her is immediately apparent, and when I explain that I've finally recognized Elena's deception, she doesn't say, "I told you so," but instead asks how she can help me extract myself from the situation safely and completely. "Elena tried to borrow money from me last month for Derek's medical expenses," Lisa tells me, and I realize that Elena has been working multiple angles simultaneously, not just draining our joint finances, but also attempting to access money from my family members who care about me enough to help with what they believed were legitimate emergencies. She said Derek needed surgery for injuries from his military service, and she seemed so worried about him. But something about her story didn't make sense, so I told her I needed to discuss it with you first. Lisa's instincts about Elena's manipulation saved her from becoming another victim of their scheme, and her willingness to support my investigation gives me an ally who understands Elena's tactics and can help me navigate the emotional challenges of extracting myself from a marriage that was always based on deception. More importantly, Lisa introduces me to her friend Rebecca Williams, who turns out to be the prosecutor who has been tracking Derek's financial crimes across multiple states, and who has been building a case against Elena and Derek that dovetails perfectly with the evidence that Sarah has been gathering. Rebecca Williams is everything Elena pretended to be. Genuinely sophisticated without being pretentious, professionally successful without needing financial support from her romantic partners, interested in justice and truth rather than personal gain and social climbing. When we meet to discuss the legal aspects of Elena and Derek's fraud, I realize that Rebecca has been peripherally aware of my situation through her investigation into Derek's criminal history, and that she's been hoping for an opportunity to speak with me about Elena's role in Derek's schemes without compromising her prosecutorial obligations. Elena Whitmore has been on our radar for 18 months as a person of interest in Derek Sullivan's financial fraud operations, Rebecca tells me during our first official meeting. And I understand that my wife's criminal activities have been attracting federal attention while I've been working 18-hour days and trusting her explanations about Derek's rehabilitation needs and their art investment partnership. We believe she's been managing the financial side of several long-term confidence schemes, but we haven't had access to the kind of evidence you can provide as her husband and the primary victim of her current operation. The collaboration that develops between Rebecca's prosecution team and Sarah's private investigation creates a comprehensive strategy for exposing Elena and Derek's crimes while building the strongest possible case for their prosecution. And I find myself working more closely with Rebecca than I ever worked with Elena during our 5 years of marriage. Rebecca treats me as an equal partner in the investigation, respecting my legal expertise while sharing information that helps me understand the scope of Elena and Derek's criminal activities. And I realize that this is what a real partnership feels like, based on mutual respect and shared goals rather than emotional manipulation and financial exploitation. Your wife is very good at what she does, Rebecca tells me after reviewing the financial records that document Elena's systematic theft of my assets. And her professional admiration for Elena's criminal sophistication is mixed with personal anger at the damage Elena has done to my life and career. She's created a financial infrastructure that would be impressive if it were being used for legitimate business purposes, and her psychological manipulation techniques are sophisticated enough to work on intelligent, successful people who should know better than to trust someone who shows so many red flags. The plan for exposing Elena and Derek at the Whitmore Foundation Charity Gala requires careful coordination between multiple law enforcement agencies and precise timing to ensure that their crimes are documented in ways that will support successful prosecution. But it also requires me to continue pretending that I believe Elena's explanations about Derek's rehabilitation needs, while secretly working to ensure that their fraud is exposed in the most devastating way possible. The challenge is maintaining my performance as the naive husband, while gathering evidence that will destroy Elena's ability to manipulate me or anyone else in the future. Elena's excitement about the charity gala grows as the event approaches, and she spends hours planning how she'll present Derek's story to the audience of wealthy donors and community leaders who could become their next targets or enablers, never realizing that every detail she shares with me about their presentation is being documented and analyzed by federal investigators who are preparing to arrest them both for fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy charges that carry sentences of 20 years or more. This could be the breakthrough that changes everything for Derek's recovery and our art investment business, Elena tells me while she practices the speech she'll give about Derek's supposed military service and addiction struggles, and I watch her rehearse lies with the same enthusiasm she once brought to describing her legitimate artistic projects, except that now I understand that all of her creative energy has been channeled into criminal activities that were always intended to destroy my financial future and emotional well-being. Derek's nervousness about speaking at the charity gala is obvious to anyone who knows what to look for. And when I suggest that we invite some of his military friends to hear his presentation, he gets the same panicked expression that confirmed my suspicions about his fabricated veteran story. "The guys I served with don't really like these kinds of formal events," he says. And I realize that he's never developed convincing details for his military background because he never expected to be questioned by people who actually understand military culture and service records. "I thought it would be meaningful for Derek to connect with other veterans who understand his experience," I tell Elena, and she immediately starts finding reasons why Derek's military friends shouldn't be included in the charity gala guest list, why his story is too personal and traumatic to share with people who might ask detailed questions about his service history and recovery process. But if Derek isn't comfortable sharing his experience with other veterans, maybe the charity gala isn't the right venue for his presentation. Elena's panic at the suggestion that Derek might not speak at the charity gala reveals how much their future plans depend on using this event to establish credibility for their next phase of operations. And I realize that the charity gala was always intended to be the culmination of their scheme to use my money and my marriage as the foundation for more ambitious criminal activities that would target Elena's family's wealthy social connections. The guest list for the charity gala includes not just wealthy donors, but also military leaders, federal investigators, and financial experts who will be able to identify the inconsistencies in Derek's story and the illegality of Elena and Derek's business operations. And when Elena and Derek make their presentation, they'll be committing their crimes in front of an audience that includes the people who will be responsible for prosecuting them. The trap is set, the evidence is documented, and all that remains is watching Elena and Derek destroy themselves in front of everyone who matters in their social and professional circles. Rebecca's presence at the charity gala will be explained as part of her role in the federal task force on veteran fraud, but her real purpose will be to arrest Elena and Derek immediately after they complete their presentation, ensuring that their criminal activities are exposed in the most public and humiliating way possible, while protecting the charitable foundation from being associated with their fraud. The timing will be perfect. Elena and Derek will have committed federal crimes in front of hundreds of witnesses. Their lies will be documented on video, and their assets will be frozen before they can transfer any more money to offshore accounts or disappear with evidence of their other criminal activities. After tomorrow night, Elena and Derek will never be able to run this type of scheme again, Rebecca tells me the evening before the charity gala. And I realize that we've built a case that will not just prosecute their current crimes, but prevent them from victimizing anyone else in the future. Their criminal activities will be public record, their financial assets will be recovered and returned to their victims, and they'll spend enough time in federal prison to ensure that they can't continue their fraud operations. The satisfaction I feel isn't just about revenge or justice, but about the knowledge that Rebecca and I have worked together to protect other people from the kind of manipulation and financial abuse that Elena and Derek specialize in, and that our partnership has been based on mutual respect and shared values rather than the emotional manipulation and financial exploitation that characterized my marriage to Elena. Tomorrow night, Elena's performance will be her last, and Derek's lies will finally catch up with him in front of an audience that includes the people who will hold them accountable for everything they've stolen and everyone they've hurt. The charity gala is tomorrow night, and Elena has no idea that she's about to walk into a trap that will destroy everything she's built with Derek, while exposing their criminal partnership to everyone who could be their future targets or enablers. This time, I know exactly how the story ends, and I'm going to make sure that Elena and Derek face the consequences of their choices in the most public and devastating way possible. The Whitmore Foundation Charity Gala unfolds exactly as Rebecca and I planned, with Elena and Derek walking confidently into a room full of federal investigators, military fraud specialists, and financial experts who have been briefed on their criminal activities and are prepared to document every lie they tell during their presentation. Elena wears a $1,000 dress that she bought with money stolen from our joint account, and Derek wears a military dress uniform with medals and ribbons that he has no right to display. And they both radiate the kind of confidence that comes from believing they've successfully manipulated everyone around them into supporting their elaborate deception. Derek's presentation about his supposed military service and addiction recovery begins smoothly enough, with Elena introducing him as a wounded veteran who has overcome tremendous obstacles through courage and determination. But within minutes, real veterans in the audience begin asking specific questions about his unit assignments and combat experiences that he can't answer convincingly. Colonel Sarah Martinez, a decorated Iraq War veteran who sits on the Foundation's board, listens to Derek's description of his supposed service with the kind of professional skepticism that comes from years of experience with military imposters. And when she asks Derek about the specific battles he claims to have fought in, his responses are vague and contradictory in ways that confirm everything we've documented about his fabricated background. "I'm having trouble understanding your timeline of service," Colonel Martinez says in the polite but pointed tone that military officers use when they're about to destroy someone's credibility, and Derek's panic is visible as he realizes that his carefully rehearsed lies aren't holding up under professional scrutiny. "You mentioned serving in Afghanistan in 2018. But the unit you claim to have served with was actually deployed to Iraq during that period, and the combat operations you describe didn't happen in the locations you've mentioned." Elena attempts to intervene, explaining that Derek's traumatic experiences make it difficult for him to discuss the details of his service, but her interruption only draws more attention to the inconsistencies in Derek's story. And when Dr. James Peterson, the director of the Veterans Administration's Fraud Investigation Unit, begins asking Derek about his discharge papers and medical records, Derek's fabricated military background completely collapses under professional examination. "Mr. Sullivan, I've reviewed your supposed service record, and I can find no evidence that you ever served in any branch of the U.S. military," Dr. Peterson announces, and the room falls completely silent as the audience realizes they've been listening to an elaborate fraud presentation at a charity event dedicated to supporting real veterans. In fact, the Social Security records indicate that during the period when you claim to have been deployed overseas, you were actually enrolled as a full-time student at an expensive private college in Connecticut. The exposure of Derek's false military background destroys the foundation of Elena and Derek's entire scheme. And when Elena attempts to explain that Derek's veteran status isn't relevant to the rehabilitation program they're promoting, Rebecca Williams steps forward in her capacity as a federal prosecutor to announce that Elena and Derek are both under investigation for multiple counts of fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy charges that have been building for months. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Assistant U.S. Attorney Rebecca Williams, and I need to inform you that Elena Chen and Derek Sullivan are currently the subjects of a federal investigation into financial fraud and veteran impersonation, and their presentation tonight has provided additional evidence for prosecution of crimes that carry potential sentences of 20 years or more in federal prison," Rebecca announces, and federal agents who have been positioned throughout the ballroom begin moving toward Elena and Derek, while hotel security ensures that all exits are blocked. Elena's shock at Rebecca's announcement turns to rage as she realizes that I've been working with federal investigators to expose her criminal activities. And when she demands to know how long I've known about the investigation, I tell her that I've known about her deception from the moment she tried to steal my bonus money to fund Derek's fabricated rehabilitation program. "You've been planning this for months, haven't you?" Elena says, and her voice has lost all pretense of sophistication as she realizes that her manipulation tactics and emotional appeals have no power over someone who knows exactly what she is and what she's been doing. You've been pretending to support Derek's recovery while working with prosecutors to destroy everything we've built together. The irony of Elena accusing me of deception isn't lost on anyone in the room, especially when Rebecca presents evidence that Elena and Derek have been stealing money from multiple victims across several states while building a criminal enterprise that was designed to defraud charitable organizations and exploit sympathetic individuals who wanted to help struggling veterans and addiction recovery programs. Mrs. Chen, Mr. Sullivan, you're both under arrest for federal charges of wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit fraud, and violation of federal laws regarding veteran impersonation, Rebecca announces as federal agents place Elena and Derek in handcuffs, while the entire charity gala audience watches their elaborate deception finally receive the consequences it deserves. You have the right to remain silent, and anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Elena's final attempt at manipulation involves screaming that I've destroyed her life out of jealousy and spite, that Derek was trying to build something meaningful while I was only interested in money and control. But her words fall flat in front of an audience that has just watched video evidence of her systematically stealing money from our joint accounts, while lying about Derek's background and their business operations. The Whitmore family's horror at being associated with Elena's criminal activities is visible, and I realize that Elena's arrest has not only exposed her fraud, but destroyed her relationship with the family whose social connections she was planning to exploit for future schemes. Derek's collapse is even more complete than Elena's, because his entire identity has been built on lies that can't survive professional scrutiny. And when federal agents search his luxury apartment, they find evidence of multiple other fraud schemes targeting successful professionals in several states, along with detailed plans for expanding their criminal operations using Elena's family connections and my financial resources as the foundation for more ambitious confidence games. The trial that follows 6 months later results in federal convictions on all charges, with Elena receiving 18 years in federal prison and Derek receiving 22 years for his role as the primary architect of their fraud schemes. The sentencing hearing provides additional satisfaction when Judge Patricia Morrison, who has extensive experience with financial fraud cases, describes Elena and Derek's crimes as particularly egregious because they exploited charitable impulses and sympathy for veterans while building a criminal enterprise designed to destroy the financial security of hardworking individuals who trusted them. The asset recovery process managed by Rebecca's prosecution team results in the return of most of the money that Elena and Derek stole from me and their other victims, but more importantly, the public exposure of their criminal activities ensures that they'll never be able to run similar schemes against other targets who might be vulnerable to their manipulation tactics and emotional appeals. My law firm, Chen and Williams Law, opens 6 months after Elena's conviction with Rebecca as my partner and my sister Lisa as our office manager. And we specialize in helping victims of financial fraud and domestic abuse while building a practice based on genuine partnership and shared values rather than the exploitation and manipulation that characterized my marriage to Elena. Rebecca's prosecution background complements my corporate law expertise perfectly, and our firm's success is built on the kind of mutual respect and trust that I never experienced with Elena, but that feels natural and sustainable with someone who shares my commitment to justice and truth. The personal relationship that develops between Rebecca and me grows naturally from our professional partnership, and I realize that real love feels completely different from the emotional manipulation and financial exploitation that Elena used to control our marriage. Rebecca never asks for financial support for her projects or friends, never questions my spending decisions or tries to access my money for purposes I haven't agreed to, never uses guilt or emotional blackmail to influence my choices, and never makes me feel like I have to choose between supporting her dreams and protecting my own financial security. You know what I love most about our relationship? Rebecca tells me 6 months after Elena's conviction, when we're having dinner at the restaurant where we first discussed the legal strategy for exposing Elena and Derek's fraud. I love that we're building something together instead of one of us trying to take from the other. And I love that our success makes both of us stronger instead of one of us having to sacrifice for the other's dreams. The contrast between Rebecca's approach to partnership and Elena's approach to marriage is so stark that I sometimes feel like I'm living in a different universe, one where relationships are based on mutual support and shared goals rather than emotional manipulation and financial exploitation, and where love means wanting the best for each other rather than using each other as resources for individual advancement. Our wedding 18 months later is a small ceremony focused on our commitment to each other and our shared future, rather than the kind of elaborate social performance that Elena always insisted was necessary for important occasions, and the guest list includes only people who genuinely care about our happiness, rather than people who might be useful for business networking or social climbing. My parents, who never quite trusted Elena's motivations but were too polite to express their concerns directly, are visibly relieved to see me married to someone who treats me as an equal partner rather than a financial resource to be managed and exploited. Lisa's speech at our reception includes a gentle reference to the lessons we've all learned about the difference between people who want to share your life and people who want to use your resources. And I realize that Elena's betrayal, as painful as it was, taught me to recognize and value the kind of authentic relationship that Rebecca and I have built together. Marcus spent years trying to make someone happy who was incapable of happiness because she was always focused on what she could take rather than what she could give, Lisa says. And her words capture something essential about the difference between my marriage to Elena and my partnership with Rebecca. But Rebecca makes Marcus happy because she's focused on what they can build together. And that makes all the difference in the world. The law firm continues to grow as we take on more cases involving financial fraud and domestic abuse, and I find deep satisfaction in helping other people recognize and escape from the kind of manipulation and exploitation that Elena and Derek specialized in, using my experience as a victim to help other people protect themselves from similar schemes. Rebecca's prosecution expertise ensures that the criminals we expose face serious legal consequences, and our partnership has become a model for other attorneys who want to combine private practice with public service in ways that make a real difference in people's lives. Elena writes me letters from federal prison occasionally, always maintaining that I destroyed her life out of jealousy and spite, never acknowledging the criminal nature of her activities or accepting responsibility for the damage she caused to me and her other victims. I don't respond to her letters because there's nothing left to say to someone who is fundamentally incapable of understanding the difference between love and exploitation, between partnership and manipulation, between building something together and stealing from each other. Derek's letters, which Rebecca shares with me as part of her ongoing monitoring of their criminal activities, reveal that he continues to run smaller fraud schemes even from prison, targeting other inmates and their families with various confidence games that exploit their desperation and vulnerability. His inability to stop manipulating people even in prison confirms everything we understood about his character and his approach to relationships, and his continued criminal activities ensure that his sentence will likely be extended when his current schemes are discovered and prosecuted. The final chapter of my story with Elena and Derek comes 2 years after their conviction, when Rebecca and I receive news that Elena has been charged with additional fraud crimes for attempting to run investment schemes from prison using other inmates' family connections, and that Derek has been transferred to a maximum security facility after being caught running an elaborate gambling operation that victimized vulnerable inmates and their families. Some people never learn, Rebecca says when we discuss the news of Elena and Derek's continued criminal activities. And I realize that their inability to change or grow is actually a kind of justice, because it ensures that they'll spend the rest of their lives facing the consequences of their choices rather than being able to start over and victimize new people. Rebecca and I are expecting our first child next spring, and we're building the kind of life together that I never thought was possible during my marriage to Elena. A partnership based on mutual respect and shared values rather than emotional manipulation and financial exploitation. Our success as a couple and as business partners proves that real love doesn't require sacrifice or manipulation or control, but instead creates opportunities for both people to become better versions of themselves while building something meaningful together. Sometimes I think about the alternate timeline where I never discovered Elena's deception, where I allowed her to steal my bonus money and destroy my financial future while building her criminal partnership with Derek. And I realize that my rebirth gave me the opportunity not just to avoid being victimized, but to build the kind of life and relationships that Elena's manipulation would have made impossible. This time, I chose truth over manipulation, partnership over exploitation, and real love over the emotional fraud that Elena specialized in. And the difference has made all the difference in the world. Rebecca and I are building something together that will last because it's based on who we really are rather than on lies and schemes and the careful management of other people's emotions and resources. And that authenticity makes every day feel like a gift rather than a performance. Elena thought she was playing chess with someone who didn't understand the rules, but it turns out that the real game was about learning to recognize the difference between people who want to share your life and people who want to steal it. And in the end, I won by choosing to build my future with someone who wanted to build it with me rather than take it from me. The story ends where it began, with a bonus that represents the foundation for my future, except this time I used that money to build something real with someone who deserved my trust and partnership. And Elena and Derek are facing the consequences of their choices, while Rebecca and I are building the kind of life that can only be created through authentic love and genuine partnership. I invested my recovery from that toxic marriage in building something better, and the return on that investment will last for the rest of my life.